Welcome to the Quality of Life podcast, where we explore how hospice and palliative care may enhance quality of life for patients living with a serious illness. Here is your host, hospice and palliative care leader and educator, Dr. Millicent Burke-Sinclair.
Hello and welcome to the Quality of Life podcast. I'm here today with Multiview Incorporated's president and CEO, Andrew Reed. Thank you so much for being here, Andrew.
It's wonderful to be here. It's the best day of our lives.
I love that. And listeners might be saying, what are you talking about? Could you start just by sharing about Multiview and why that statement? It's powerful.
Well, obviously, Multiview is kind of a Six Sigma-ish company if you really get down to it. Primarily working with hospices, and I won't go too far into that right now. But again, we're always looking at system solutions rather than people solutions. And I think that a lot of people, they're looking for their change agents to come in and make things better rather than, thinking about the supporting systems. Because I think most people want to do a good job in whatever their respective organizations are, but they're failed by the systems and processes provided by the organization, the structure. And so much is involved with that. Now, how that gets back to the question that is the best day of our lives? Well, obviously, if we have the perfect visit, the perfect phone interaction, the perfect meeting has to be part of that. And so we always start really with three grounding questions. First of all, what are you? You're a feeling, because we know that's the basis of all memory and recall. And also we want clinicians, especially in a hospice context, to be focused on the emotions and really being able to read the room, to get medically sensitive about, that care experience, because it could be the first, the last, the only interaction or visit they'll ever get. So, of course, we've got to be beautiful and orchestrate this beautiful care. So the first question, what are you a feeling? Second question, what do you see yourself as? Hospice was never meant where we do the care, just like home health. We're there guiding people through an experience with which we are most familiar with, especially in such a vulnerable state. So empowerment is probably a better word. Empowering the caregiver to do the care in our absence. Why should somebody suffer for an hour till an on-call person arrives when the caregiver could be empowered to remedy the situation in moments? Okay, so what are you a feeling? What do you see yourself as? And as teacher, and the third question is, what day is it? And then all the clinicians in unison say, it's the best day of my life. And then, of course, we do call-outs, as any master teacher would do, and say, what does that mean? And then they say it's about accountability, that I'm going to own my life without blaming others or circumstances. And that question alone is a structural solution that matures childish behaviors, which is so prevalent in healthcare especially, into mature people that own their lives, that own their job, that own their work, because most of our work is done autonomously, and it should be done with a certain level of professionalism. And in hospice, again, I look at it as ministry. I look at Multiview as ministry. There is no room for screw-ups. And as far as, standardization, which is a big part of what we try to teach people, how to become standardized and world-class, you have to have ultra, ultra, ultra high standards. Again, we measure so much with very uncommon measurements. Our quality metric is one of the main ones, and you don't need that many quality metrics because that dilutes focus, and you can have few that cover broad swaths of measurement, whether government or whatever. But one of them is the number of complaints or screw-ups, and so we measure it in terms of thousands. Right now, the current record is 5,553 visits without a single screw-up, beating the prior record of 4,222. And that's the quality that many MBI clients are moving towards now. A lot of them, they may be going 1,000 visits without a single complaint. And a single complaint is defined as any serious expression of dissatisfaction from an internal source. And of course, people have to be, all complaints, all screw-ups have to be reported up to leadership because they're in the position to make the structural changes, again, the system solution. And so very, very high standards. Whereas in a lot of healthcare organizations, well, they have complaints or screw-ups every day. Oh, we didn't get this right. Oh, this didn't happen. It was late. And that's just not acceptable in hospice work. So it just kind of went on a riff.
No, I like what you were saying, because for our listeners, they may be someone in the community saying, I feel like I might have a need for hospice, or it might be another provider throughout the community or a different state even that says, I want to be able to provide the best care.
Yeah.
And so that gets me to the second question. The second question is around, how do you help hospice organizations? So what I heard from that I think is really important is beautiful care.
Yeah, beautifully orchestrated care.
Yes.
That
Talk about
is
that.
the interdisciplinary team.
Yeah.
It's an orchestrated experience. It should be beautiful care.
And patients deserve that. Families,
Yes.
most of all people deserve that. So for our listeners, can you share what that should look like?
Although most of the quality things, and again, Multiview is all about quality. Obviously, we get phenomenal economics, but that's a natural byproduct of doing great quality. That's where you always start. Yes, it starts with perfect phone interaction, because that's normally how people are going to experience. Obviously, the website can be involved and some email, but they should be perfect emails. And perfect is a term we use a lot, which means to the standards of the organization. So those standards better be high. So a perfect interaction where, Four Seasons Hospice, Andrew speaking. Well, 3 things about Andrew right there. They know they got to the right number. They know they're speaking with Andrew, and Andrew's happy. That is all that is needed with the phones. We don't use automated systems. We don't use anything like that. We don't say, how may I help you? And all those little league things that people say. And then they mention their name. It's written down, and they never have to mention their name or describe their circumstances again, because it's captured by the first person. So even if they're transferred to another person, they're not inconvenienced. We want to focus on the care. And so that phone interaction, listening to the unspoken need, getting the emotionalized exact words that people are having this validate and match, so that people feel like they're heard. And that's where care starts. And of course, phones are a big part of MVI. I mean, of course, we have to model these standards. Like right now, we're at 3.5 years without a single phone call not ringing more than 3 times and being answered by a competent, real person. The longest we ever went is 4.5 years. And but extended period of times. We usually go about 8 months between service failures. But that's that. But then they see us, so we have to have our we have to dress to the standards, and which would mean a look or uniform, because if you're just plain wearing street clothes, you are invisible. We could simplify the hospice equation to, we're here just to help people feel better. So they see us because we feel better with people that are in smartly dressed outfits. And we do the perfect visit with 6 phases, 35 discrete points that are done on every visit, so that small things as well as large things are never missed. Nobody's running out of medications. Nobody's running. I mean, that's almost an unheard of event when people are really doing the perfect visit. And then the perfect documentation to support it, so that the care is organized. We have to have this organizing document, and we would document the way we document regardless of whether we got paid with that. The fact that we do, has some merit too, and is obviously needed. But then, how the organization's put together, all that has to be modeled out. But the point is, it's all about quality. Those are really the 2 big things that have to be worked on. That and the development of the manager when we were winning the Baldwin for our area years ago. The only hospice ever to do that. And this is one that myself and a friend, Norman, who was the chair of NHPCO a few years ago, we formed it in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn and just said, if we take all the MVI stuff and everything Norman knew, put them together, what happened? And then we formed that organization. We grew it to 1,000 something in, a few years. But learned a lot, but it's all based on quality. And Norman said, hey, let's do something that no hospice has ever done as far as quality. Let's win a Malcolm Baldrige. And they have it in different areas and regions, and we were going after one of those. And there's two of the highest quality awards in the world, the Baldrige and the Demings Award. Those are the worldwide standards. And we won the first time. And that was a very proud day. And I learned so much. It developed a lot of our thinking about what world-class really means, and these are the steps. But I can ask most of the leaders, and I know that Multiview, we've trained over 12,000 CEOs and leaders through the last 29 years. I can ask them about standardization, and only a couple would be able to say, yes, it starts out with this, obviously choosing or selecting your set of standards, the commonization of those standards through written form, again, intensive training materials prepared, intensive training data. I'm just the steps that are needed to get just this incredible level of quality that I think that we owe to the communities we serve.
I think you said that so well about owing it to the community to provide that exceptional care every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's one thing that Four Seasons has been incredibly grateful for, being a part of MVI for years. We get to learn what is that incredible care? What does the sunny day experience really mean? How do we ensure that people do get the consistent care and consistent access to people? And, so often we hear people say, it's scary to think about reaching out for care, but we don't want people to think that it's scary. We want them just to reach out and us bring comfort and confidence right away. We can't do that, though, if we're not consistent. And that's one thing that Multiview certainly has helped is what should consistent be and what should that confidence be provided like? How should that be?
Three big C words there. Confidence, which comes from intensive training, actually successful training. And that's why we put together visit labs and phone labs and manager labs. Because if we've been doing this for a while, we should have already anticipated all of the issues, because it's the same stuff happening over and over. This is a world of pattern.
Well, people just simply deserve the very best care. And I wonder, Andrew, if you'd be willing just to share with listeners a little bit of history of how you and Four Seasons came to be.
Oh, boy. Well, I'll try to give the nutshell on Multiview, but I've been in hospice for 35 years now. It kind of scares me when I say that. Starting like 1990, started out as accounting manager. Before that, I worked in music. I had the same manager as Bruce Springsteen, Charlie Daniels, Janice Ian, Don McLean, and then I decided I didn't like the music business anymore, so I marched up to the top level of the United Artists building and told my manager I quit. So I had to learn how to do something else. So I taught myself how to program in C++, and BASIC. I talked my way into a job with a compensation company where we were doing textile mills and all these different companies, country clubs, retail, all this. So I knew compensation very well. I figured, money's probably important as well as computers. So I became a CPA and a system analyst. And that's where the systems that we talk about, that was where I really excelled, of how to structurally look at things, identify the bottlenecks. All that was a big part of my development. I was actually leading programmers after a while, and customer service was always part of that. Well, anyway, I saw an ad in the paper to work for a hospice, and of course I always wanted to work in something herbal, and then of course found out that it was something very different than that. And I started out as the accounting manager. And then finally they made me the controller. I worked for Deborah Daly, one of the brightest hospice CEOs, just brightest CEOs, period. She's just a brilliant woman. And Deborah, I owe great debt to her mentoring me. And so Winston-Salem, we grew it to 400 and some patients. And then she took a job in Hospice of Palm Beach. And 28 days later, she called me and I became her VP. And we just turned that place around. We did all these great things to the census. We put away about $100 million because obviously I tore out every system they had. And then, but back in Winston-Salem, here's where we're trying to get to here, is I developed this compensation system. And because Deborah came in and said, so, you worked developing comp systems for all these different business sectors before. And I said, I did, Deborah. Well, I need one in 2 weeks, our quality kind of needs a facelift. Our productivity is not great. Let's do something about it. So I did. Anyway, we had 100% increase in productivity and 100% increase in quality. And this just got all around the hospice world. And so I found myself talking to, the big audience at NHO. This is before it was NHBCO. There was thousands of people there, a couple thousand people there at that conference. They just thought I was making it into a business and all this. But there's a few entities that said, hey, there's really something to this. And I started getting all these phone calls. And so I started Multiview. And of course, 29 years later, here we are. We've served over 1,300 hospices. I kind of stopped counting at a certain point, trained like 12,000 CEOs with all these big conferences that we've done through the years. And multi-day tough training events where they have to get like 300 questions perfect. That's how serious I think our work is. At least that's how serious I take it.
Think about it, that's what the community deserves.
Absolutely.
So if we have a loved one that's going to receive hospice care, we want to make sure that the people providing it have the knowledge, the skill set, the competency to do so.
People don't know about probably that as I came in and we were discussing it. Well, I was coming through town. Hendersonville Hospice, or Henderson Hospice, was actually one of our clients, and I was coming through and had a census of 28. And I was at the hotel, and Jeff Ward, who was the chair of the board, called me up and said, can you come down to the bank? And he's like the regional VP. And he says, listen, we want Multiview here in Henderson County. Get whatever house or we'll do whatever we have to do to support you. And that's it. That's how we actually got here. And that is beautiful, is a great thing. But I remember, obviously, I went on the board right away, and I'm saying, come on, guys, we got to just blow through this. We'd already helped grow lots of hospices because we've grown a lot of hospices, 1,000. We've got 21 ways of doing it documented. But I was going to say is that just getting the thrift shop, well, people did not want to do that. And then eventually I got to be the chair of the board, and Chris, of course, was down at Pensacola. He's the CFO. And I said, I'll bring you some candidates, but there's this kid down in Florida. He's a CFO right now. And there you go. And that's how Chris got here. And of course, obviously, the results, I walk around this beautiful building and the campus and everything, and wow.
It's pretty amazing when you have people who are passionate about positively impacting lives, what's possible.
Yeah, and you're one of those lights, because I very much enjoy your whole focus on quality. Obviously, it has to come from a quality person, but even seeing you around town and everything, you're just a shining light here. And I think a really good example of an ideal hospice leader. And I think the community needs to know that. I mean, I can speak with some faint authority of all these CEOs, these hospice CEOs I've worked with, of who's good, who's not so good. And again, I tend to make a lot of enemies just because I'm gonna talk truth. I'm not gonna suck up and tell people things are not true. Just not gonna do it. And so, anyway, thank you for your contribution and all your beautiful staff.
Well, thank you. I still remember I've been here since 2014,
Yeah.
and I came in and learned under Chris. And it was really beautiful because one of my first experiences, he said, is you've got to go through Multiview. And I was not in the role of CFO, nor did I ask to be in the role, but I went through the CFO training.
Yeah.
And then certainly expanding in roles before becoming the CEO in 2017, I had been the COO. And one of the lessons learned from Chris and from others is quality matters.
Yes.
And the way I like to say it is, in order for us to fulfill our mission, we have to provide exceptional care. It starts with caring for ourselves and those around us so we can care incredibly well for the community.
Yes.
And so when we think about that, people might say, well, why should I choose your hospice over another hospice? Because we genuinely care from the very beginning of who we hire to every single interaction thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that I learned from your CFO training and then many other trainings that I've gone through with you for years is that commitment to that exceptional care has to be all the time. It has to be.
Yes.
There's no negotiating. And our patients and our families, our referral partners, they deserve that guarantee.
Yeah, laser beam focus on
And
quality.
we'll find out that there's something we don't do well. We call it service recoveries.
Yep.
And so we say, okay, we want to know, let's learn, and let's do something about it. And that actually makes me think of something. So a question that I believe would be beneficial for listeners is, what is the MVI model? You've talked about it, but there's 7 areas of design work and there's goals that are important to your model. I think we've talked about the most important goal, people receiving excellent care. But could you share a little bit more about the model? That's one thing we've seen beneficial, certainly with Four Seasons.
Yes, in the orchestration of this, beautiful care, this meticulous attention, to detail in that experience. Yeah, the model. When we think of a model, we think of something that has some intention behind it, that someone has put some thought. And that's actually the feeling. We say, what are you feeling? And so when they experience Multiview or they experience from our clients, their hospice care, the feeling that we want to create is that of someone has put tremendous thought into this. Or you might even language it like this: someone has put tremendous love and cared enough about me to think about everything, from the look to the very language that they use, to the smell, to their body language, positive eye contact, smile, eye level lean in, all these things, validate and match that are in this, that this is just so not made up. And it's not mechanical in any way. But, having that structure, again, that liberates people to actually have professional judgment, to be able to read the room. And this is what's going on in these people's life. But yet nothing's missed, small or large. Okay, so the model. A lot of people probably, because we are CPAs and system analysts, put us into the financial domain. We've got great reputation we can take any hospice and get their economics worked out pretty fast at this point. Because really, when you get down to it, okay, we measure with our benchmarking application, and that's in 1,000 or so hospices, where we extract 989 data elements with 922 cross calculations on a monthly basis. And then here in Hendersonville, we basically study the 90th percentile statistically, because most people are average, right? That is the definition of it. It's the 50th percentile, the place where all the measures of central tendency converge: mean or average, mode, median. And you have to know that to be a legitimate professional in any field, really, is what is happening in the 50th percentile. But we're interested in the 90th percentile. So we take what they're measuring, and then say, what is giving rise to these incredible, phenomenal results? And then we document it, which is the second point in standardization, in a Six Sigma type way. And then, of course, get that information or those practices to our clients, whether it's admissions, whether it's on call, whatever. So that's kind of a nutshell of what MVI does. But the model, okay, the financial, okay, people think about us there. We don't use budgets, not for ongoing operations. We use percentages of net patient revenue, which gives us dynamic feedback. Because a traditional budget, there's always all kinds of issues, and I'm not going to go through my spiel on that. Budgetary slack is built into the things. There's just all these reasons. Probably one of the biggest ones is there's two forms of variances in a traditional budget. There's a volume variance and efficiency variance, and you can't tell one from the other. Strip away the volume variance that clouds everything. Yeah, just because you have a goal of having a census of 1,000, so you might have a census of 800, but be operating very efficiently at a very high quality. So you want this dynamic monthly feedback as often as you get so that you can correct along the way. So the financial model, and of course, all the measurements, I mean, just hundreds of measurements we put on an NPR basis so we can tell you what the cost of, again, admissions, on-call, IT, all the supporting areas, obviously nursing, all this, what those things are so that we can operate with really precise information and therefore make good decisions. Okay, so the financial aspects of the model, but then it goes in these other things. We already mentioned perfect phone interactions, perfect visits. Both those are elements of design. I'd count them separately because they're so important. I'm actually going to have 8 of them here. But then team design, where everybody reports, all disciplines on an interdisciplinary team have to report to one manager. So nurses, aides, one person can organize these. And what does that look like? And that's why, and we focus so much on what we call the extraordinary clinical leader, because that's one thing that Norman, and I'm so thankful for Norman, but he said as we were forming that hospice, that Andrew, I read in Gallup that 70% of the training, the morale, and the retention of frontline employees comes from the relationship with the immediate manager. Let's focus on that. 70%. And that's what we did. And that's how we won. In every hospice that I've either, started, which, lots of not-for-profits, for-profits, done that because we work with all hospices from the largest that exist to the smallest, or even those are just visions. So that team design, and I'll say that the extraordinary clinical leader is part of the team. But then there's also product design. This is all the physical products that you'd use in conjunction with your care. All master teachers would have written things. Operational manuals. And we use our operational manuals. People wonder how we can grow these hospices to 1,000 pretty close or higher. Well, we got operational manuals. You can say, hey, let me see your operational manual. And they can't produce it. They're just making it up as they go and, turnover, all this. Then I think you also have to have this design feature and bereavement. That's the other thing. I've experienced so much trauma and loss in my life. 2 years ago, I lost my daughter in a car wreck. I lost Roman, my son, a great number of years ago now when he drowned, And that, of course, that led me on the incredible journey. And after 14 hospice counselors, I found out they only had one thing. Let's talk about it. And it's not like you can just go out in the woods and think your way through this. And I got really desperate. And I was probably the number one customer of Amazon, and I got a grief library, at the cabin. And I started reading all these books about a new kind of normal, and then after this kind of loss, I was going to be pretty messed up. And wow, I thought this is going to be tragic. But someone's got to have more than just let's talk about it. And so bereavement design is critical because I remember I was in Salt Lake City, and I took the CEO up on top of the hill, and I said, look at that city. It's a city of hurt people, suffering people, and they need extraordinary, beautiful care. They also need extraordinary bereavement using the latest things we know. So bereavement's a big thing. People, but then just to finish this out, people development is probably the thing that Multiview does better than anything else. I know we're known for the financial aspects and stuff, and obviously quality results, but the development of human beings is where it's at, because the true assets and liabilities of any organization are walking in the halls. They're not on the balance sheet. And so we've divided up through the years into 4 different processes. And we base these on the greatest teachers that have ever walked on the planet and the greatest organizations, and have basically put them together. And we've broken it down into 4 different processes. The first, people attraction. Then the people selection processes. Then of those people that get into this elite club, how do we develop them? So people development. And then people retention, because it does us no good to hire top talent only to lose them. And if they're really good, they go to a competitor and use those practices against us. So that's the thing that we probably do as well as anything. And all of this is tied by the last element of design, and that's the design of compensation systems, the very topic that got us on the national stage years ago. And we're still doing that because it's impossible to go to world class without addressing the comp systems. That is what wires the entire organization, where you don't have silos, where your indirects, your finance team or whatever are doing their own thing, and then your ops teams are doing this. Everyone's got to be working together. And so we continually work at systems that wire these folks together, that you create this system of mutual reliance, that everyone has to do their jobs, and people get hurt if they're not doing their jobs. We want fair, rich systems to produce healthy cultures and all this. That's at least the elements of design.
I really appreciate that you shared that, because I think if I am a community member or someone at another health provider, I would be wanting to listen and say, how can I be sure that we provide the very best? It takes what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And so the community needs to know they're going to have the most consistent quality care by 4 seasons each and every time, right? But there's a lot that goes into it, and you just described that.
Well, and we actually, obviously marketing's part of this too, but for the consumer of hospice services or referral sources, we actually have kind of preemptive questions, so they can ask intelligent questions about the hospices that are in the area. Do you use the perfect visit? Is a great place to start. Can you tell me about it? And I expect someone to say, oh, I'm glad you asked. Yes, we have a 6-phase visit. There are 35 discrete points. That's what we expect from the CNA to the nurse to the social worker, anybody. So to me, that's the beginning of that conversation of whether someone's quality or not quality.
That makes me think about so much impact over all the years that you have been leading the MVI. Is there a story that you might be able to share that connects why this is so important?
Boy, there's lots of stories. I'll just go right home with my mom. I'd been in hospice for about 12 years, obviously knew something about hospice, being the CFO and doing all this and even, starting Multiview. But anyway, Mom got cancer and stuff. And I just knew we were very vulnerable. And we just needed somebody to guide us through this. Again, I'd been in hospice for 12 years. I had not been in the passenger seat, you might say, of driving this thing. And it was so necessary. And we had already been writing about the perfect visit, what we knew about it, clear back then. And I just know how important it is. And I know how much we damage people when people are not considerate, when you don't feel that love, that, again, someone has thought about me. That's what really drove it home, or for me. My personal experience, that's one thing. But far before that, I always worked hard. I've always worked so many hours. I mean, I had to have meetings at Hospice of Winston-Salem because Andrew works too much. I was there all the time. Why? I was interested. And I remember one day I was there probably at 9:30 at night, still solving problems. And it's almost like a beam of light hit me that said, this work is significant. And I just know I changed in a minute. Yes, I thought it was great from an intellectual standpoint that we're helping people that are suffering in vulnerable states, in high pain. But then I knew there's more of that. Again, I look at Multiview, I look at hospice. This is still ministry to me. And there's too many MBA types and smart guys that are trying to get into the business to make a buck. And I'm their greatest fear. Oh, you've got to be in it, for the right reasons. And it's a whole mission.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
And so if there's listeners that say, okay, I want to find out more about Multiview, or I want to find out more about Four Seasons, go to our websites. And I can tell you that we are committed to co-creating the very best care. And when we think about co-creating, that means we do it together. And the Multiview Incorporated model is really key with that. Every single encounter that we have, whether it's someone who calls us, someone who stops into one of our home stores, as we call it, or someone who sees us out, however we meet someone, we say, what's most important to you? So we genuinely listen and we genuinely care. And then we bring those Multiview tools to make sure we are providing consistent, exceptional care. And so, Andrew, I know that there's so much that you could share and there's so much that you've learned. And I just want to say thank you because you've made a positive impact on my life and certainly our organization. And every day I look forward to thinking, you know what can we do better? Better for our community, better because everyone deserves the very best care.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people throw around the word best practice as though they have the whole enchilada. Well, nobody has the whole enchilada, so therefore it's best known success patterns or practices, because we surely wouldn't run a hospice today as we did even a couple years ago, or let alone going back to, decades ago. We've got to be growing and improving. And normally that involves not complication, but simplification. The more brilliant people of this world tend to be very elegant individuals that have simplified things to a great extent, because complicated breaks. So what is the best known way? And
you share it every day,
that's it.
Right? And, every year, Four Seasons, we like to pick a focus topic.
Yeah.
What is that focus topic that's going to help us deliver the most exceptional care? So our new fiscal year starts tomorrow, October 1st. And when we think about October 1st, we're thinking about how do we innovate the best care?
Mm-hmm.
It's not innovate to make something fancy or different or complicated. How do we simplify?
Yes.
So we're making possible the very best care every single time. And so that's what we're going to be focusing in on this year.
So simplification?
Yes.
Yeah, because focus. It's just like Steve Jobs. This guy had laser beam focus. He comes into a near bankrupt Apple and says, we're going to get rid of all these products. We're only going to focus on these 3. And then bringing high accountability, but that laser beam focus and saying no to distracting opportunities.
So good and so important, especially when you think about innovate. You have to say yes to some and no to other
you say
opportunities,
no,
right?
You can say no a lot. And that's the problem with so many organizations. Again, as we look over these 1,300, they're trying to go in too many directions. And every time you go in another direction, it dissipates energy and focus. And then we wonder why quality is not at a world-class level. Yeah.
Well, for those that are listening saying, I want to know more, just reach out to us on the website with Multiview or Four Seasons. I like to end a time by just inviting you. If you truly believe that you or someone you know could benefit from Trust Care, reach out to us. We're all about learning what's most important to you and how can we deliver the best care.
And if you don't mind, we got the Multiview podcast,
Yes.
creating the perfect company. Now that's really for everybody, not
Yes,
just
it
hospice.
is.
Because like I just was training Green Berets actually this last week. These are active duty, but we got to know them in Helene, and they said, "Man, this Multiview thing, we could learn something. Even though they're like one of the most elite forces we have, we could learn some things." I'll be going down to Bragg and working with them down there. And so the philosophical podcast is, what are you willing to throw your life away on? But a lot of it comes from this deep examination. I think you've worked in hospice for any extended period of time. It gets in your blood. It's in your DNA. You become a more profound person because you're looking at the great certainty. And
For them to access those podcasts, they go to your website.
website is just www.multiviewinc.com.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time, Andrew.
Okay. This has been a groovy experience. I've enjoyed it. And thank you so much for thinking about us.
Very, very grateful.
The Quality of Life podcast is produced by Four Seasons, the care you trust, providing award-winning quality hospice and palliative care to Western North Carolina. For more information, visit fourseasonscare.org or call 866-466-9734.